Next, Servlet listeners. Next heading, Servlet listeners. Servlet listeners, nodan. Servlet listeners are interfaces that contain Servlet listeners are interfaces that contain event handlers. Servlet listeners are interfaces that contain event handlers to handle events. Servlet listeners are interfaces that contain event handlers to handle events, which are generated by web container. Noted? These all interfaces which contains methods to handle events, nothing but class and objects, which are generated by web container. Servlet listeners are interfaces that contain event handlers to handle events. Here terminology, listener, event handler, event. These all required. Listeners are interfaces, handlers are methods, events are objects. Nothing but with classes. See, for example, HTML programs you have seen. There also event handling will be there. Here, you will click submit button. You have seen username, password. Here username, password. You will click submit button. You will click reset button. Say you will enter a username, you will enter password, you will click on submit button. Then your request password to Servlet. Like this you have seen. This is no need to write. Just listen. Login.html. Now here login Servlet.java. You observe in a login.html page, you typed username, you typed password, you clicked on submit button. Then your request password to login Servlet. Okay. Here actually what is happening here, event handling mechanism is there. Event handling mechanism. Whenever you click the button, one event generated. That event handled by one method. Event nothing but object. that method will handle. With that, this program executed. See, otherwise, okay, I'll compare with core Java exception handling. Now, with exception handling, you'll get a clarity. See, suppose here demo d equal to new demo. Okay, otherwise, see, string yes equal to new string. S of 1 equal to 1 string, core Java. S of 2 equal to advanced Java. For loop, integer I equal to 0, I less than s dot length, I plus plus. System dot out dot println s of I dot to uppercase. Think yourself and give me answer. What will happen? There is just core Java program. Just core Java program. Now, this program first, will it compile or not compile? Decide. Will it compile? Yes. Will it compile? Yes or no? No, is there? How many will answer no? Why it will not compile? Object is not created. Where? S of 0 not created. But will it compile or not compile? Program successfully compiled. Say. Program successfully compiled. Java C demo.java. Successfully compiled. Now, will it execute or not? Give me answer. Exception. Okay. Any other? Program will not compile. Is it clear first? Already I have shown. Program will compile. Okay. Program will compile. Successfully compiled. There is no mistake in syntax. Syntactically everything right. Now give me answer. Will it execute or not? Will it execute or not? No. How many will answer no? Why it will not be executed? Then which exception occurs? Which exception occurs? Null pointer exception, array index order point exception. Any other? Any other? Null pointer, array index. Now here array size 3. Now what I am using? 0, 1, 2. I am using size properly. So array index order bounds exception will not occur. Which exception occurs? Null pointer exception occurs. Here, two uppercase method if you want to call. Two uppercase method, instance method or class method. Instance method. Either object or object reference required. Here S of 0 is not there. I written S of 1, S of 2. S of 0 not there. S of 0 contains null. Null you cannot call. If object is there, you can call. Either object reference is there, you can call. Null is there, we cannot call. It is null pointer exception will occur. See, compilation, success, execution, null pointer. execution null pointer exception. See, exception in thread main java.lang null pointer exception because is null. S of 0 is null. Nothing but okay. Otherwise, now void show demo d equal to null. Now d dot show. First, will it compile or not compile? Compiles. Will it execute? No. What will happen? Null pointer exception. That is same, no change. Okay. This is same. Here null for you, null appearing. There null doesn't appears. But null is there. Okay. Here demo d equal to null. Here object is not there. With object reference, you cannot call. If you want to call with object reference also, right side object should be there. Then only you can call. Only directly d contains null. With that, if you call show method, null pointer exception comes. So here what is happened? D contains null. There is no object. This type created. Now this null hash code is there. You can call methods. Hash code is not there. So this pointer doesn't points to object. That is called null pointer. This is like a pointer type. References are nothing but pointer type. This pointer doesn't points to object. Okay. Pointer doesn't points to object. Null pointer exception occurred. Okay. Here, but null pointer exception, is it checked exception or unchecked exception? At least, okay, if it is checked, unchecked, leave it. Compilation, execution, you have seen. Seeing that also you can give answer. Null pointer exception is checked or unchecked? Multiple answers coming. How many will answer checked? How many answer not checked, unchecked? But remaining people, one more answer is there. Only there are two categories. Checked, unchecked, other category not there. First, how to identify checked or unchecked? Now, these many class over advanced Java also over exception handling every day we are writing. Now, suppose one class I'll give. That is example null pointer exception. Now, suppose you don't know whether it is checked or unchecked, you don't know. How to identify? How to see? Whether it is checked or unchecked, I want to see. How to see? Without compilation, without just a Java library, how to identify? Profile. If this class is derived from exception class, that is called checked exception. If the class is derived from runtime exception class, that is called unchecked exception. Say Java P java.lang null pointer exception. Okay. Null pointer exception extends which class? Runtime exception. That means checked or unchecked? Unchecked. If the class is derived from exception class, checked. If the class is derived from runtime exception class, unchecked. The classes which are derived from exception class are called checked. The classes which are derived from runtime exception class are called unchecked. But runtime exception also derived from exception, but not included. That is also is there. Okay. Suppose arithmetic exception, I want to see whether checked or unchecked. How to see? Java P java.lang arithmetic exception. See arithmetic exception. Arithmetic exception also derived from which class? It is checked or unchecked? Unchecked. Suppose array index bounds exception. Java.lang array index out of bounds exception. Now Array index out of bounds exception extends which class? Index out of bounds. Again, you have to check. Again, you have to see the library. Again, Java P, Java.lang. Index out of bounds exception. Index out of bounds exception derived from? It is unchecked exception. Suppose Java P, Java.io exception. IO exception derived from which class? Exception class. That means checked exception. Now, every day we are writing SQL exception. SQL exception. SQL exception derived from which class? Exception. That means now, if the class is derived from exception class, that is checked exception. If the class is derived from runtime exception class, unchecked exception. Which type of exceptions are mandatory to handle? Checked exception. If we don't handle, what will happen? Compile time error occurs. If we don't handle, compile time error occurs. Suppose in your program there is a checked exception. Suppose in your program there is a checked exception. You didn't write try catch block. Will it compile? No. It will not compile. See, for example, this exception handling required to understand the Servlet listeners. Then you will get a more clarity. Suppose java.io.file input stream. Okay. File input stream, file input, suppose file not found exception. Okay. This is Java P, Java.io.file not found exception. File not found exception derived from IO exception. IO exception derived from exception. That is checked exception. Suppose in a program, I'll write. This is in advanced Java class also you have seen. File input stream, FIS equal to new file input stream. Now file name. Suppose args of 0. Let the command prompt I'll pass. Now it will throw one exception. See. First this is in which package? IO package. Okay. Now you observe this constructor. This constructor, you observe. Now, it is public. Public means it is accessible anywhere, no restriction. It is constructor, class name, method name, same. So, it is constructor. When constructor is called? Whenever object is created. It takes one parameter string, one file name we have to pass. Throws, what is there? File not found exception. File not found exception is checked or unchecked? Checked. Is it compulsory to handle? If you don't handle, what will happen? Compile time error occurs. You observe. Compilation. Compile time error occurred. Okay. Now, one more question. Is it syntax error or exception? Is it syntax error or exception? What is it? Syntax error. It is not exception. Exception means runtime error. Is it compile time error, runtime error? Compile time error. So it is not a exception. It is compile time error. See, unreported exception, file not found exception must be caught or declared to be thrown. What system saying? Either write try catch block or write throws. System saying either write try catch block or write throws. Okay. Now, every statement must be terminated with semicolon. Every statement must be terminated with semicolon. Is it syntax or not? Syntax. If you don't write semicolon, what will happen? Compile time error occurs. Every checked exception must be handled. If you don't handle, what will happen? that type. So it is syntax error. It is syntax error. File not found exception, when it will occur, if the file is not there. File is there or not, when it will check, after passing file name. Till I didn't pass file name. Is there any file name here? I written args of 0. While executing the program, I'll pass. While executing the program, I'm going to pass file name. Okay. Now, this program, till I didn't pass file name. After passing file name, given file is not there in the system, then file not found exception occurs. It is not a file not found exception. File not found exception must be caught error. What is your point? Now, first exception means runtime error. But is it runtime error? No, it is compile time error. But why it is occurred? We have to write try catch blocks. Okay. So what system saying? Unreported exception, file not found exception must be caught or declared to be thrown. Either write try catch block or write throws. Either write try catch block or write throws. Okay. Now, if you want to avoid this exception, this error, what we have to do? We have to write try catch block or we have to write throws. Any one we have to write. That means we must handle file not found exception is checked exception. Okay. File not found exception, checked exception. Is it compulsory to handle? If you don't handle, now, suppose if I give one exception, whether it is checked or unchecked, how to identify? With the Java P command you can identify. One more way, no need to see Java P. Compile. If you get an unreported exception, must be caught or declared to be thrown, then you can understand that it's checked. If checked is there, then only this error comes. Otherwise, this error will not come. No. Unchecked exception, system handles. That's what that error will not come. Is one more way. One more way also possible with knowledge. Okay. SQL exception, it occurs only JDBC. That is checked. Servlet exception occurs only in servlets. Checked. IO exception, it will occur only streams. Checked. Application specific. Checked. General. Unchecked. Many places may occurs. Null pointer exception will occur. JDBC also, Servlet also, welcome program onwards also it will occur. That type is there. Unchecked. Like that also. 3 ways to identify. Checked, unchecked. One way with Java P command. One more way with compilation. One more way with knowledge. Now, try catch or throws. You have to write. Suppose I'm writing try catch. Now, file not found exception. With this, you will understand Servlet listeners very easily. You observe. Here, system.err.println FE. Now it will compile successfully. Okay. Now we have to pass one file name, abc.txt. If this file is there, open for reading. This file is not there. File not found exception occurs. That file not there. File not found exception occurred. Okay. Now, in this case, now first what I did, Java demo abc.txt. Then demo class loaded. Demo class loaded. This abc.txt received by main method. That args of 0 passed. This constructor executed. Now that file is not there. What will be happen? Exception occurred. Whenever exception occurs, what will be happen? Object created by JVM. So here actually object created by JVM. Which object? File not found exception. So automatically one object created. New file not found exception. This object created. This is passed to catch block. Then this code executed. Whatever you written inside the catch executed. Here, whenever exception occurs, that particular exception object created by JVM, okay, that object passed to catch block code executed. So if exception occurs, object created, that object passed to catch block code executed. Catch block is called exception handler. It will handle exception. Okay. Now, Servlet listeners, what will happen is, whenever application deployed, one object created. Whenever Servlet context created, one object created. Whenever session created, one object created. Like this, many places objects created automatically. Whenever object is created, event generated. That object passed to event handler. Event handler nothing but method. That method executed automatically. So here, whenever exception occurs, what will happen? Object created. That object passed to catch block. There what will happen? Whenever event object created, event generated, that event passed to methods. Methods are executed automatically. Those methods are present in listeners. So what we have to do? Listener interface we have to implement. We have to write methods. Those methods will handle event. Now, who will handle exception here? Catch block. There who will handle method? The method where it is in event listener interface. That is. So web container generates events. If you want to handle, you handle and write some code that is automatically executed. Now, catch block. Are you going to call the catch block? Whenever exception occur, automatically called. Like that, here exception handler, their event handler. Whenever event generated, automatically handled. Automatically method called. That mechanism built in. But why the name is listener? Always it is going to listen. Okay? Listener. Listener is going to listen. If event comes, it will listen, it will handle. It will call. That type. But in previous classes also, listeners were there. But we didn't write code. Previous classes also, previous programs also, event generated, but not handled, not listened. Reason, we didn't write listeners. We didn't write listeners. Say, I'm teaching. All are listening? No, like that. Previous classes not listened. Now it is going to listen. Okay, that type. So, here, web container generates events. Previous programs also generated, but we didn't handle. Now we are going to handle. Every program generated. Say, what will happen? It is web application, server. It is web application. This is deployed. Then event generated. Application deployed. Event generated. That event I didn't handle. In previous program, generated. I didn't handle. Now I'm going to handle. Now web application deployed. Event generated. Again, if you remove, one more event generated. That is also handle. Then while deploying, you can write some code. While undeploying, you can write some code. That those methods automatically executed. Automatically. No need to write call, no need to call methods. It is not possible to call, automatically executed. So just you need to write the methods. It will handle. But in previous programs also generated, we didn't handle. Now we are going to handle that type. Here, when this catch block is going to be executed, whenever exception occurs, like that, some methods are there. Whenever event generated, method called. That method if you write, it is called. If you don't write, not called. Previous programs we didn't write. That's what not called. That type of methods are there. If you write in the program, it is automatically executed. Depends upon your requirement. You can choose. Now, Servlet listeners are interfaces that contain event handlers to handle events which are generated by web container. Now, web container generates event that is nothing but object. That object, if you want, class required. That is also event class, event object. Event class is present, event object created by web container. That object passed to this method. This method present in interface. That interface called listener. Okay. Now, web container generates events. That means objects are created. That type of classes are there. Those only events. But we have to handle for that methods you have to write. Where these methods? In listeners. What listener will do? It will listen. It will listen. Whenever event generated, it will listen, it will handle. Now, if you see programs, you will understand. Now, next, write it. List of Servlet listeners. Servlet context listener. Servlet context attribute listener. HTTP session listener. HTTP session attribute listener. Dash dash etc. Not done. List of Servlet listeners. Servlet context listener, Servlet context attribute listener, Servlet HTTP session listener, HTTP session attribute listener, dash dash etc. List of Servlet listeners. Servlet context listener, Servlet context attribute listener, HTTP session listener, HTTP session attribute listener, dash dash etc. Many listeners are there, but one listener, if you know, remaining listener, same style, no change. First one, Servlet context listener. It contains the following event handlers. It contains the following event handlers to handle Servlet context event. It contains the following event handlers to handle Servlet context event, which is generated by web container. It contains the following event handlers to handle Servlet context event, which is generated by web container. It contains the following event handlers to handle Servlet context event, which is generated by web container. Now, I'll give the list of methods. One listener, if you understand, remaining listener, same style, no change. Many are there. Now, Java page Jakarta dot Servlet dot Servlet context listener. Write these all methods. Okay, already written this one. No, write this one. Otherwise, only directly methods write it. Already written, write like this. It contains the following event handlers to handle solid context event, which is generated by web container. So directly methods write it. So Servlet context listener is an interface. In interface, these two methods are there. These two methods will handle Servlet context event. I'll explain. Now, are these abstract methods or concrete methods? Abstract method or concrete method? How do you know that is concrete? Default. It is Java 8 feature. Java 8. Okay. Default keyword is there. So concrete method. Okay. But they didn't write any code. Just open brace, close brace, and null body methods they given. Now, Servlet context event is generated by web container whenever web application is deployed and undeployed. Servlet context event is generated by web container whenever web application is deployed and undeployed. Okay, otherwise 1 minute. Servlet context event is generated whenever Servlet context is created and destroyed. Servlet context event is generated by web container whenever Servlet context is created and destroyed. Now, Servlet context is created by web container whenever web application is deployed on server. Servlet context is destroyed by web container whenever web application is undeployed from server. Is it on? Servlet context event is generated by web container whenever servlet context is created and destroyed. Servlet context is created by web container whenever web application is deployed on server. Servlet context is destroyed by web container whenever web application is undeployed from server. I'll explain. Is it over? Suppose not over. What are the points I given? Each and every point. Remember. Suppose it is server. Okay. It is one dynamic web project developed. This is you will deploy. Whenever deployed, what will happen? Context is created. That is already studied. Servlet context is common to all servlets or specific to servlet? Common to all servlets. Servlet config specific to servlet. Servlet config specific to servlet. Servlet context common to all servlets. Config initialization parameters. Context parameters. Okay, these all you studied. Now see. Already in the previous program, we developed web application, we deployed. Okay. It is server. It is server. It is application developed. It is application developed. This is deployed. Whenever you deploy, context created. Then, whenever created, then event generated. Event generated. This event passed to context initialized method. You see, context initialized parameter, what is there? Servlet context event. So that method executed. Suppose after this, you will undeploy. Servlet context destroyed. Then also event generated. But context destroyed method called. Okay. You observe here. You observe here. It is application, it is server. It is the application. This is deployed. Then servlet context is created. Say given. Servlet context is created by web container whenever web application is deployed on server. So this application I deployed on server. Then servlet context created. Here I given. Servlet context event is generated by web container whenever servlet context is created. So event generated. That event received here. This method executed. That method automatically executed. Where is that method? In listener interface. Servlet listener, servlet context listener. So, suppose in a Java program, previous program, if I write this method, when that method executed, whenever servlet context event is generated, when that event generated, whenever servlet context is created, when that context is created, whenever application is deployed. That means that method when it is executed, whenever application is deployed. In between, many things happened. Okay. First, what you will do? You will deploy. Then what will happen? Context created. When context created, what will happen? Servlet context event generated. Event passed to context initialized method. Then context initialized method executed. Okay. Now, this application I'll undeploy. Again, what will happen? Context destroyed. Then also event generated. Then event received here. But which method called? Context destroyed. So whenever web application is deployed, first servlet context created. Next, servlet context event generated. Next, that object passed to context initialized method. Next, context initial method body executed. That method body we have to write. That method is present in listener interface. Okay. Now, done. Is it over? The following series of actions done by web container whenever web application is deployed on server. The following series of actions done by web container whenever web application is deployed on server. The following series of actions done by web container whenever web application is deployed on server. Application deployed. First, what is happened? Servlet context is created. Second, what will happen? Servlet context event is generated. Next, what will happen? Servlet context event is passed to context initialized method. Next, context initialized method body executed. Note, context initialized method is present in Servlet context listener interface. So when you deploy, context created, event generated, password to context method, context initialized method body executed. Whatever you write, that is executed. That method previous programs we didn't write. That's what not listen. Now we are going to write it will listen. That's it. Now, next. Again, the following series of actions done by web container whenever web application is undeployed from server. Now you can give answers for this. First, what will happen here? Servlet context is destroyed. Next, what will happen? Context event is generated. Next, Servlet context event is passed to context destroyed method. Next, context destroyed method body executed. Note, context destroyed method is present in listener interface. So this program, what we have to do, just we have to write, we have to place. It is automatically executed. Okay. Listener program, just we have to write, we have to place in server. It is automatically executed. Now see, in a one word, if you want to say, when context initialized executed, when our application is deployed, when context destroyed method is executed, undeployed. In between, so many things happened is all. But context initialized method is executed when our application deployed. Context destroyed method is executed when our application undeployed. Okay. But this series of actions done. Now, where we use in real time this one, see. Say, here two methods are there. Two methods you write, you place in application. When event generated, automatically executed. No need to call. Now, where we use in real time, see. Is it over? Writing is over? Completed all students? Say. Say login program you have seen. Login. In this login dynamic web project, how many servlets are there? How many servlets? 3 servlets are there. Okay. Now login servlet, registration servlet, welcome servlet. Login servlet.java. Here, init method, connection establishment code is there. Okay. Registration servlet, connection establishment code is there. But 2 servlets we return connection object. Now, instead of this, here login servlet connection only I want to use in registration servlet. Possible or not possible? Now, my question, carefully listen. In login servlet also we made connection. Registration servlet also we made connection. But instead of writing 2 times connection establishment, this already created in login servlet. That connection object only, this connection object reference only, I want to access in registration servlet. Possible or not possible? Possible or not possible? Possible. How to use? Now, that connection reference, can I call variable? Yes or no? Is it instance variable or class variable or local variable? Instance variable. No. How to access that connection in registration servlet? How many ways to access instance variable? What are those? Which class object will create? Are you going to create? Who will create? But that object can you access? You have to create object. If you create object, again what will happen? Life cycle, all those things, it is going to be executed. These servlet objects we are not creating. Who is creating? That's what we should not create. That's what these here programs are different. If it is core Java, what will do? Like that only will create. Okay. In core Java, what will do? This class object will create, this reference will access in other class. That type will write. But here we are not creating. I'm not creating login servlet object. I'm not creating registration servlet object. But I want to write this connection one only, not only 2 servlet. Real-time projects, 100 servlets also will be there. Then one connection only I want to use for all connections. It is possible with listeners. Listener, what will do here? How to use? See. What I'll do here, Servlet context listener, context initialized method is there. Okay, context initialized method. I'll write here. I'll write some code. Okay, context destroyed. One method. I'll write some other code. Now, this one, I'll make it as one class. Something class name, my listener. Okay. Now, my listener implements Servlet context listener. We have to, that is the interface, no? Interface. You have to implement. You have to override. Now here, what I'll do is here connection establishment code I'll write. Connection establishment code. I'll write. Here connection close code I'll write. Connection close code I'll write. Okay. After this, now This application I'll deploy. Whenever application deployed, first what will happen? First what will happen? Servlet context created. Nothing but memory. It is a memory common to all servlets. Servlet context created. Okay. Here with the servlet context, I'll set attribute. Here something Oracle connection. Something I'll write. This is I'll execute. Then it comes here. Here name of the here name value pair. Here Oracle. Okay. It is connection. I'll place this one. Now this connection. Now first this servlet context. Is it common to all servlets or one servlet? This connection can be used by all servlets. No. So what I'll do here, another servlet I'll write. One servlet I'll write here. So my servlet I'll write. This is I'll retrieve. This is I'll retrieve here. Here I'll call get attribute. Servlet context dot get attribute. Servlet context dot get attribute. Oracle I'll pass. You'll get a connection. This connection I'll access my database. Later I'll release. Again object placed here. That object can be used by other servlet also. Now login servlet we return connection. Welcome registration servlet we return connection. Instead of there, you write connection there. That is place here. You can access here. Now application deployed, connection established. Application undeployed, connection closed. So before getting first request only connection established. Application deployed, connection ready. Application undeployed, connection closed. It is better, no? Now that to this connection, not only for one servlet, this connection can be used by all servlets. Suppose in a war file, 10 servlets are there. 10 servlets can use the same connection object. But there what we did, every program we written. It is better, no? This is. That too here no need to call. Application deployed, this is executed. Connection is ready. Application undeployed, this connection closed. So it is automatically done. You are not going to call this program. This program only you are going to execute. This program you are not going to call. It automatically will listen. The listener always it will listen. Whenever event generated, it handle. Write this one. Is it completed? Say, when the solid context created, whenever application is deployed, context created, then event generated, that event received by this method body executed, connection established, that object placed here. This object we are using here. This object not only in this solid, other solids also can use n number of solids. But one connection object can be used by all solids in that WAR file, in that web application. Now, instead of creating in every solid connection, here you create, here you access. Then you are creating here, you are accessing here. When this is executed, whenever application is deployed. When this is executed, whenever application is undeployed. And deployment time only created, undeployment time vanished. In between you access. You can access a number of solids. Okay. This is a concept. Now, suppose this is interface. This interface contains context initialized, context destroyed. But it is not a solid listener. But how to get solid context? In this class method is there to get context. To get the context, this is required. Write this method. It returns solid context reference. In a solid context event, as a parameter, it comes. From that, you call get solid context, you'll get a context. The context is accessible everywhere. That is the reason get solid context, many places that method is there. Or in generic solid also this method is there. This is required in solid program. It is listener program. This is required. And HTTP solid extends generic solid. In that class already implemented. You can access. Is it over? Is it over? No. In solid program also required. No? Set attribute purpose this one. But get attribute method purpose, that is also required. See, here also method is there. Noted? See, in the diagram, two concepts are there. Here. This set attribute method, if you want to call Servlet context required, this context is available here. Servlet context event. But here required no Servlet context get attribute. That's what my Servlet extends HTTP Servlet. HTTP Servlet extends that method I'm using. Right, this one. This program we'll see tomorrow.